Peeps, that's real loud. Berto Sanchez did some archive digging.
We are live in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to a Newsline special report. Today is October 26th. I'm Palakiko Chandler.
And I'm Allison Caffery. It's been 50 years since the Kerner Commission warned America about the dangers of racism and segregation.
Today we join with Morgan State University and West Virginia University to provide you with more than 4 hours of coverage on race relations in America.
This is the Kerner Plus 50. In the mid-60s, the country was rocked by an increasing number of race riots.
President Lyndon B. Johnson ordered a report to get to the bottom of these issues.
Since most of us didn't live through it, understanding the significance of that report isn't exactly easy.
Newsline reporter Jasmine is with us to keep it all into context. Jasmine, at the heart of the issue, what is the Kerner Report?
Well, I have it here with me. This is a 68 edition of the report of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, a U.S. bestseller at the time. It's not exactly a catchy title, so why were Americans so eager to read it? Here's the history. They called it the long, hot summer of 1967. Over the span of a few months, more than 160 race riots broke out all over the nation.
Looting was very widespread. Among broken glass, bricks, torn up pavement, looted stores.
The tension of the civil rights movement had reached a breaking point. The week following the two worst riots in Newark, New Jersey and Detroit, Michigan, President Lyndon B. Johnson made a phone call and then 10 more.
John.
Hello, Mr. President.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, sir.
One of these was to Mayor John Lindsay of New York.
I want nothing but competence, and I want nothing but compassion, and I want nothing but patriotism.
In an address to the nation the next day, the president introduced the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, commonly known as the Kerner Commission.
Otto Kerner of Illinois has agreed to serve as chairman.
Governors, mayors, and other leaders, two of which were black, made up the bipartisan commission. Over the next 7 months, they investigated, interviewed, and surveyed in 23 of the cities where the riots had occurred. They were to answer 3 simple questions. What happened? Why did it happen? And what can be done to prevent it from happening again? Once published, the report was wildly popular and sold 740,000 copies in the first 3 weeks. So, what had happened, and why? The report's biggest finding was that the riots were not planned defiance against government, as some had thought.
It took the appearance of 14,000 troops to bring an end to what both Negro and white leaders called insurrection by hoodlums.
The commission found that blacks living in the ghettos were upset about police practices, unemployment, inadequate housing and education, and disrespectful white attitudes. In short, the riots were a cry for help. So what could be done? Policies and programs came as the answer. The Kerner Commission made hundreds of recommendations on the federal, state, and local level. They asked Congress to create 2 million jobs in 3 years. They asked cities to create better training for their police officers to better preserve human life. And from the average American, they asked for new attitudes, new understanding, and above all, new will.
We will stop it. And let us build something much more lasting. Faith between man and man. Faith between race and race. Faith in each other. And faith in the promise of beautiful America.
The Kerner Commission concluded their report with these words. We have provided an honest beginning. We have learned much, But we have uncovered no startling truths, no unique insights, no simple solutions.
They sure got that right. No simple solutions. Thank you, Jasmine.
In the 50 years since that report, the print and electronic media have made significant changes in the way that minorities are represented in newspapers, magazines, television, and film. Reporter Berto Sanchez did some archive digging. Berto, what did you find out?
Media has contributed in shaping how we see minorities. Words and verbiage used in the past 50 years has changed dramatically since the release of the report.
They rushed the 39-year-old Negro leader to a hospital where he died of a bullet wound in the neck.
In 1968, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, some of the words used in reports were racist and politically incorrect. Those terms are heard in network TV broadcasts and in newspapers from the day.
The way media portrays people affects that underlying racism. In general, media has changed to be both more sensitive towards the fact that sometimes people of color are left out of representations, or white folks are normalized. Like that we only see white people as heroes of the story.
There has been an evolution on the depiction of minorities in media. For example, ads created in the 70s by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were very whitewashed. The commercial depicts only the stereotypical Caucasian family. In recent years, the church has reached out to highlight the diversity of church membership. Ads created over the past 30 years have become more racially diverse. The ads indicate the church's increased understanding of diversity and inclusion of minority groups.
Within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there is a growing awareness and concern with the fundamental problem of racism. Like a lot of American society, it also is trying to become aware of and respond to the underlying racism that has created so many problems in American history, and try to respond to that in a constructive way that allows people to come together, especially within the church, in a way that looks towards an eternal future that won't be driven by these kinds of conflicts, but can be driven more by what we believe in, which is charity, love, compassion, a willingness to see all people as brothers and sisters.
Media plays a huge role in shaping our perception of reality. When media creates a more unbiased view of minorities, it is possible to diminish the stereotypes that are attributed to them and create an atmosphere that is almost free of prejudice. Back to you.
In Search for Solutions, lawyer and activist Bryan Stevenson opened up a museum and memorial in April located in Montgomery, Alabama. It is dedicated to people terrorized by lynching. Newsline reporter Christian Torres tells us how BYU advertising students have taken to the task to promote the memorial and how that task has changed them.
Before graduation, a traditional advertising student at BYU might choose to do their final project creating an advertising campaign for, say, Nike shoes or Coca-Cola. But this year, a group of seniors have decided that their capstone project should have a little more meaning.
One of the main reasons why I love advertising and why I wanted to do it was to be able to make a difference.
Meet the team whose final project is to promote the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, a site dedicated to people terrorized by lynching. The team is all white.
Down here by the tower, where the route is.
For the past few weeks, the team has been working on researching how students at BYU, a predominantly all-white campus, feel about talking about topics concerning race relations. Their findings? BYU students tend to shy away from race, but they feel more comfortable if their conversation is centered on a figure involved in race relations. And that figure of interest lately is Bryan Stevenson.
They really found Bryan Stevenson to be interesting. They loved the topics and things that he discussed, but also his accomplishments.
Stevenson is scheduled to make a guest appearance at BYU next week to give a forum address on his Equal Justice Initiative. And the ad students are taking advantage of this opportunity to run an ad campaign on campus promoting the forum. If this mini campaign works, they'll use the same methods in a much larger scale for the real project, promoting the memorial in Alabama.
This poster we put all around campus. We have digital versions.
The team is using every modern technique to raise awareness about Stevenson's forum next week.
The first thing they see is Bryan's TED Talk.
If these students weren't originally interested in the topic of race, most of them are now.
I think it kind of just opened my eyes to the diversity that is in our country because, I've never really lived in a super diverse world.
The students' ultimate goal is to design a campaign advertising the Montgomery Memorial, but they recognize that even the efforts they make on campus can help other students change their perspective on race.
That is something that I want people to get out of it. It's not not to kind of step back from the issue and kind of say, oh, that's not my world, I don't have anything to do with that, I don't want to hear about it, but to kind of own it and say, okay, we as a country have a problem here and I'm now aware of it, and what can I do as an individual to help it?
For Newsline, I'm Christian Torres.
Here on the campus of Brigham Young University, there's a lack of diversity among students and faculty.
Newsline reporter Katie Karras is on BYU's campus. Katie, how are students coming together to bring unity to those who feel alone?
Here at BYU, it's not uncommon for students of color to feel out of place, but there are a variety of clubs across campus that are trying to change that.
Yeah, civil rights. Look at that. Social justice.
Meet Kira.
Just right on my face.
Your typical college student trying to balance school, work, and a minor obsession with British pop stars.
I love Harry Styles, no shame.
But on the campus of Brigham Young University, Kira is far from typical.
Everyone's white.
And even before coming to BYU, Kira knew she was unique.
We are not your traditional family. It's kind of like a this is us situation.
As the oldest of 3 adopted children raised by white parents, Kira always felt accepted. But it wasn't until she started elementary school that she started to feel different from those around her.
Like if you look through all my yearbook pictures, like in elementary school, I'm the only one in every class.
Never had her skin color mattered.
For all those kids to stare at me, it was really uncomfortable because I was like, I am just like you. I go home to white parents. My grandparents are white. My cousins are all white, so I'm not different.
After graduating high school, Kira moved to Oahu to attend BYU Hawaii, and from there to London, with internship experiences taking her to New York and even Los Angeles. So when she moved back to Utah to finish school in Provo, it was a shock.
Really hard to deal with, especially when you move back from a super diverse place where everyone is mixed race, comes from all different types of ethnic backgrounds, different cultures are always celebrated, so it's really a crazy experience to come to a place that is so vanilla.
According to the university, nearly 82% of BYU's campus is Caucasian. And in a recent study done by WalletHub found that out of Utah's top 4 colleges, BYU ranked last for diversity. But there is a place on campus that Kira feels she can fit in, through clubs like the Black Student Union.
So the Black Student Union is just a place where students of color can come to feel safe. It's a place where we can have fun together and kind of be around people that we can relate to.
The BYU Student Association says the purpose of the club is to intellectually, socially, and culturally enrich the college's campus. But to its members, it means so much more.
Because here, being a minority, it's hard to find a group per se, especially people you feel comfortable around.
The club offers activities and other ways for students to connect. But BSU isn't the only place. The Women of Color Club is one Kira feels personally connected to.
Some of the most intelligent, eloquent, and amazing women I've met in that club.
Other opportunities for students include the Civil Rights Seminar, aimed at providing students with knowledge and skills to improve race relations in the United States. A mixed group of BYU students who spend time touring historical sites related to the civil rights movement.
That was probably the most spiritual experience I've ever had in my life.
BYU is providing opportunities for everyone to feel like they belong. And for students like Kira, a place to find unity.
Comforting to know and be validated in my experiences, because I think for a lot of people, for most of my life, I felt very isolated.
And while remembering back to experiences in her past, Kira says she's hopeful for the future.
Things are definitely changing. I think our generation gives me a lot of hope, I think, so that makes me kind of excited to be a part of it.
In addition to BSU and the Women of Color Club, there are nearly 30 other clubs across campus. You can find out more about these groups and how they're making a difference at clubs.byu.edu. Back to you.
Thanks, Katie. According to the NCAA, 47% of college football players are black. However, here at BYU, that number's only 15%. Newsline reporter Adam Gibby found out that across all the sports, BYU has a much lower percentage of black athletes compared to the national average. Adam, you spoke with several of those minority student athletes?
Yes, I spoke with many athletes and coaches, and they all seem to have a very similar story. And let's just say it doesn't follow the typical stereotype.
Here's what many think of when they think of Brigham Young University. Black students make up 0.5% of the BYU population, compared to an estimated 16% of college students nationwide. The majority of these black students at BYU are athletes.
Steps up, on the move, downfield.
As one may imagine, it may be a culture shock when minority athletes come to Provo for the first time. Senior sprinter Keisha Miller is from Bermuda and is not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She says the first time she stepped foot in Provo was during her freshman orientation.
When I first got here to BYU, I just remember thinking, wow, there's a real lack of diversity.
Despite being a minority on campus, many feel at home. Micah Simon, a junior receiver for the football team, says that despite being from Fort Worth, Texas, a city where nearly 20% of the population is black, Simon feels at home here in Provo.
I look at all people, the same and equal, and that's how I want to live my life and spread positivity.
School administrators and coaches are trying to make athletes feel like they belong.
More diverse now than it was, pretty much 20 years ago now. Being here is actually a great thing. People kind of take you in and treat you like family.
One reason minority athletes may feel welcome is because many students have served church missions all around the world. 63% of BYU students have served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, many of whom served in areas where they became the minority themselves.
As a mission, I went and served in southern Mexico, and I went from a very middle-class background, predominantly white community, to being one of the only white people in the area.
Despite the perceptions of BYU, athletes are finding a home away from home.
Once we're all together, it's all a brotherhood, it's all family, and everybody just feels welcome.
Coaches and administrators tell me that BYU is always searching for ways to be more inclusive and welcoming to all athletes by having clubs, activities, and by recruiting from around the world. Reporting for Newsline, I'm Adam Gibby.
Cameron McCoy is one of the few African-American professors here at Brigham Young University. During his undergraduate studies, he did not like the lack of racial diversity here in Provo. Newsline reporter Carmen Kodia is here today. Carmen, the history professor, is here at BYU to break racial stereotypes.
That's right, Palikiko. It's been 16 years since McCoy graduated, and now, back on campus, his goal is to teach students how to act and think differently on social issues.
Intense, focused, dependable.
Those three words best describe Cameron McCoy. The Washington, D.C. native remembers his childhood as challenging but rewarding.
Learning how to navigate in a poor working class neighborhood, learning how to navigate through violence in D.C., those are all serious challenges.
After graduating from BYU, he served his country by becoming a Marine Guard.
As a kid, just believed it was important to serve and fight for my nation. It truly was a calling. I felt at a young age it was what I was meant to do. I remember getting commissioned in the Marine Corps. That was really important. I served as a rifle platoon commander, company commander, and things like that. And I really remember always wanting to be a lieutenant colonel, and that happened. And so those are things that I look at and really, happy about and pleased about.
After his service, McCoy realized education was also a top priority.
Making it through school, being successful in school, was the most important thing.
That's what you all do to me. McCoy was very successful, earning his master and doctorate degrees.
So I can only speak from my standpoint. When I was a student here, I would love to have seen professors of African descent. I never saw that while I was here.
Inequality is still prevalent in our society.
How does that topic always come up when it comes to the United States? And if we just look back to the founding of the nation, it was founded on inequality. And I think that's rooted. As a matter of fact, I know it's rooted in the identity of the United States. I do believe that the nation has improved. The fact that you and I are sitting here and having this interview on a college campus. Just a statement, kind of like...
McCoy says he came back to BYU because he felt an obligation to give back to the school that had helped him in his career.
In my class, I want them to gain greater empathy for diverse groups. I want them to do their best to break away from a homogenous way of thinking. I want them to be more globally minded and understand that they play a critical role in not only the mission of BYU, but their mission as Christians and as saints. That's really the best part, is getting students to continue the conversation.
Dr. McCoy teaches history and hopes more people will recognize the importance of diversity in society.
Carmen, how do students at BYU like Dr. McCoy's teaching philosophy?
They love it. He helps his students, he has high expectations for his students, but he helps them to reach them. Dr. McCoy is humble and wants his students to succeed.
Thanks, Carmen.
A professor has partnered with a library at the University of Utah and with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to develop a database that shares the history of African American members of the Latter-day Saint faith. Newsline reporter Cameron Hussein has more on the story.
Century of Black Mormons is a digital history database. It documents and recovers identities and voices of African American Latter-day Saints during the faith's first 100 years. Paul Reeve, the head of the project and a history professor at the University of Utah, said, "I hope the information in the database will help scholars of religion and lay people alike begin to understand what it meant to be twice marginalized, a member of a minority race within a suspect minority religion." BYU student Andrew Panaris says the database has been eye-opening.
So the thing I love about this website is it not only gives information about this not being a white religion, but it also, it's so much more than that. It gives stories and backgrounds about different people and kind of what it was like in that time to be a minority or a person of color.
The exhibit contains digital records of original documents, photographs, and fascinating biological essays. It also shares statistics pertaining to gender, slavery, and locations of their conversion. However, the most compelling aspect of the database is the rich stories of African American members like Jane Manning James, who participated in early church women's organizations, and Elijah Abel, who served 3 missions for the church.
I like the things that I've been able to read just about Elijah Abel and other Black Mormons and other pioneers. Personally, maybe not my ancestors, but the other culture of Black people and Black pioneers that have been out there.
The exhibit's archive contains nearly 40 biographies with the plan to add 200 more. The hope is for the project to help historians tell a more complete story during the faith's first century, one which includes members of color. Reporting for Newsline in Salt Lake City, I'm Cameron Hussein.
For those who have documents, photographs, or other supporting evidence for individuals in the database, you can contact the University of Utah's library through email at centuryofblackmormons@gmail.com.
If you haven't yet seen it, it's the last week to watch the film Jane and Emma in Utah. Newsline reporter Marin Klein is here with us today. Marin, what is all the buzz about?
The movie Jane and Emma is the first of its kind within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint community. The film, set in 1844, tells the story of an African-American Latter-day Saint woman and the unlikely friendship she had with the prophet's wife.
We tried to get on the boat. They wouldn't let us on account of our being black. So we walked.
You cannot just make a film about racial issues without doing a lot of hard work to understand it. And I don't understand it.
I wanted you to be my sister forever. I'm your sister till someone thinks I'm your girl.
Jane Manning was born a free Black woman. She converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Connecticut in 1841 at the age of 28. Following her conversion, she and her family traveled to Nauvoo, Illinois to join the prophet Joseph Smith and the Latter-day Saints. On their travels, they were refused ferry passage because of their race and walked the remaining 800 miles to Nauvoo. Jane then lived in the home of the prophet Joseph Smith and his wife Emma, where she and Emma developed a strong friendship despite the racial climate of the time.
The production team that I worked with, my writer, producers, everyone that was creating Jane and Emma, we were a really unique group of women and men.
We wanted to make sure that we got Jane right, and we wanted to make sure that we maintained Emma's voice.
For Squires and the team, telling a story from the perspective of a Latter-day Saint Black woman in the 1800s required a great deal of time, listening, and script revisions.
Draft number 10, draft number 15, we got through that. It was hard.
Honestly, it was a difficult process.
Difficult addressing racial issues, but also difficult delving into racism within the church.
Actually, we struggled with understanding each other.
But Squires believes the struggle had a purpose. She says it helped give her the depth and experience she needed to bring the story's tension to life on the big screen. Before the official release, they had a screening for Brigham Young University students with the Black Student Union.
Cause it's too much pain, Lord.
BYU student Andre Johnson said the film showed
that the church was also started by Black people as well. No one knows their stories. So oftentimes when someone raises their hand and they say something ignorant, in response, I raise my hand, I let them know that this is wrong. But this movie makes it in a way to where I don't have to do that anymore.
I think that Jane and Emma creates the uncomfortable conversation.
They found that people of all ages, races, and genders have connected with Jane.
When you relate to someone that you never thought you could relate to in such a deep spiritual way, there's a lot of good things that can come from that.
On the movie's opening day, the church and Bonneville Charitable Foundation agreed to match every box dollar office up to $40,000 to donate them to the NAACP Salt Lake branch. They reached the $40,000 that day.
Thanks, Marin.
JTM is well known in the Utah community.
Newsline reporter Sydney Storr sat down with rapper turned entrepreneur. Sydney, what makes him so unique?
JTM's EP, I'm Not a Rapper, reached #1 on the iTunes Hip Hop Top Albums chart. In addition to his career, his race and religious background are truly what have made him distinct.
I'm commonly known in this area for doing music.
James Curtin, also known by his musical pseudonym of JTM, is a hip-hop artist based in Provo, Utah. His rise to fame began in the very community that he also worships in.
I personally am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I have an interesting perspective because I'm actually half white, half black.
While there are many Latter-day Saint musicians, James has not only managed to hit #1 on the charts, but he's also been among the few minorities from the Latter-day Saint community to do so.
I think that I've become acclimated to just being in a minority. I actually grew up overseas in Russia, China, Taiwan, and Uzbekistan. So even being an American or a Christian person, I was always in a minority.
Even though he's adjusted to his situation, he still sees a demand for change.
I don't think people in this area are inherently racist in any way, at all. I think that they might be extremely ignorant to what it's like, and they might have conceived stereotypes based on, media or their experience.
James says that he personally hasn't encountered any roadblocks on his road to stardom, including his passion for entrepreneurship.
At least when it comes to entrepreneurship, they judge a business based on the products rather than the race of the person who runs it.
JTM also says that people need to start caring about racial issues. He also says that it's really important for people to step outside of themselves and see the world around them. Back to you.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you for joining us today. That's all we have for this special edition of Newsline.
For more coverage on the 50th anniversary of the Kerner Commission, you can join us right now on our internet live stream that's on our YouTube page, Newsline.
For all of you staying with us for the rest of the symposium, we will spend the next hour discussing the Kerner Report. Next, Julie Rose from BYU Radio joins us now.
Have a great day. Amazing things.
I learned so much.
Welcome to the BYU Radio studio in Provo, Utah. I'm Julie Rose, host of the daily news interview show Top of Mind, heard weekdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Channel 143 and BYURadio.org. You're watching continuing coverage of Kerner Plus 50, an examination of race in America 50 years after the Kerner Commission report. The commission, which had been appointed by President Lyndon Johnson, blamed racism and systemic discrimination for fomenting